John Rush, welcome to the Insight Jam.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here. We actually seeked you out to try to give us the modern perspective on what's happening with kind of feet on the street agentic AI, but also a solopreneur's perspective on how to build startups and businesses in today's era. I know you're working on a lot of projects, so there's no one particular company to associate you with, but talk a little bit about where you are right now and what you're working on.
Yeah, so my background is coming from VC-backed startups. So I've been running VC-backed startups since 2010, and we had large teams. So we were doing everything that the typical VC-backed startup does. We were raising seed, Series A, and scaling internationally. So I've done that for many years, for 10 years. And around 2020, I tried AI. I tried GPT-2, I think it was. And I kind of felt that it has really high potential. And I was never a big fan of having large teams. So basically, the biggest pain of my job was the people. Like, some people like to work with people. I don't. I like people in general, but not at work, right? Because at work, you have to tell them what to do. And I don't like that part. I like to be friends with people, and I'm a nice person. And here, people just use your niceness as an excuse to not do things. So I always wanted to automate things. And I tried all my life. Like, all my companies had fewer people than the competitors. So we always automated things, but without AI. And in 2020, I did my first AI automation. So I had this startup that was like B2C. We were doing like concierge for tourists, where you, instead of installing all the taxi and Airbnb and the pizza delivery apps when you travel to a new country, you would just use this concierge app and you tell it, I want pizza, or I want from A to B, I want pick up from the airport. And then the system would connect to the local system and make the order. And then, since the local systems usually are in different language, for example, you're in Turkey and then it's Turkish language and they reply in Turkish, they ask some questions, it would translate on the fly, and you would kind of see it all in English. And it worked really well. So people really liked that. And we used the first GPT that could do that. That was GPT-2, I think, or it was GPT-3. I don't remember which version was. And then the COVID lockdown started and the whole company just died because we had to wait and wait and wait. And then I felt like I don't want to do the business where it's so dangerous. Like, they close the borders and the whole product is not functioning. So I went into B2B from that moment. And when I went to B2B, I thought, like, I have to do the same thing in B2B. So I want to create tools that replace people for the founders like me who don't like to work with people, but who rather want to use tools to automate the same thing. And back then, it was not that popular because people didn't think the AI can do that. Most people didn't really know the AI even exists. And also, since the venture world was crazy hot and you would just raise anything you want if you have some traction, so nobody cared. There was no shortage of money. You could just hire as many people as you want. But I didn't want to raise money anymore because I kind of felt like the whole venture model is not for me, because I don't like to stay in San Francisco. I don't like the meetings and all those things. So I wanted to bootstrap. And I thought, like, the only way to bootstrap and to compete with VC-backed startups that have a lot of money is to use tools that automate the part that's expensive, which is the people. Right, like 90% of the money goes into the people in the early stages, and that's where I started doing that. So my first project was kind of the project where I automated the coding itself, because I thought, if I automate the coding, then I will use that tool to build the other tools to automate the other things. Right, that's why I have to start with this one, because it will give me the biggest leverage you can have. And I started with that. So I spent 2 years doing that, from 2020 to 2022. And in 2023, I entered the arena with this tool, and I built a lot of other tools I just needed. I built a tool for growth, for SEO, for social media, for project management, for testing, for design, for building websites, basically everything that I do daily or I do weekly. I started building tools for that. And long story short, so now it's 2025, so 2 years since I'm fully into this kind of automate your whole organization game. So I'm trying to automate everything so that I can run entire organization where I make all the like decisions that have to be done by humans. I do the judgment, I use my taste, my intuition, and then everything that takes hours and time done by the agents. So 2 years into the game, 7 agents on the market, and a lot more side projects on the market. Like total number is like 26 now. And some of the agents are doing pretty well. I think few of them are probably the best in their class in the whole world right now, and they're growing like crazy. So basically, growing faster than I can handle. I would say that's a good thing. But from other hand, it's I haven't slept well, like more than 5 hours for like maybe a year now, because it's just things are growing. But it's good pain. I like to have this pain because I can automate more so that I can handle it. So instead of hiring more people to help myself to handle the growth, I suffer the pain now quite heavily, but that helps me to define what exactly I have to automate to relieve the pain, right? So that's where
Well,
I
so
am now.
while you've been building these agents over those 2 or 3 years, the models themselves have been improving
Yeah.
incredibly quickly. Are you seeing that impact, and does that alter how you're developing and tweaking your agents as you go? And do you see like are you seeing a significant impact in terms of the advancement of the large language models that are now being enabled?
So when I started, my guess was that I have to account for the innovation within the LLMs so that I don't waste time on building the thing that becomes just out of the box from the LLM itself, such as a RAG, for example, or like JSON output and things like that. So that was the reason why a lot of the tools I built early, I never even launched, because I knew that I better wait and then I launch a better version, because if I launch now, it's not good enough. So the market will push me to improve it because it's not good enough.
So the models weren't going to be able to deliver against
No,
the agent.
the first agents I built, they helped, but the amount of human oversight was pretty solid. Like sometimes it was 50-50, sometimes it was 70-30. It was far from 90%, I would say. And 90% is where you get actual gain from the agent. So I would say very often the only reason I gained something from my agent was that I had multiple projects. And when you have multiple projects, then even 10% gain is serious, because, you save on every project. But for a typical founder, that's too little to use the tool, because they need at least to double their productivity. If they don't double, they won't change their habits. And that's why I knew that before I go to the market with every tool I have, every agent I have, it has to be good enough that the message is clear. Like it saves you 90% of the time. If it doesn't save you 90% of the time, it's not good enough to win the attention. And that's why in 2022, I had it all in house. I launched nothing. So in 2023, the first half of the year, it was all closed. I opened for beta some of my agents at the end of 2023. And in 2024, in September, that's when I opened most of my agents for the public, basically after I felt like the models are great. So the GPT-4 was great. It was smart enough in 2023 in April. At that moment, I felt like now I'm sure I can build all the agents I ever want. That was the moment where I felt like finally, so I didn't make the wrong bet, right? So the LLMs managed. But the problem with GPT-4 was that it was not stable on the output, because they didn't invent the JSON outputs yet, and they didn't invent the tool usage and function calling. So basically, it was good inside of the chat GPT where you talk to it. But if you use it in a system where you have to have predictable behavior, it would often fail, and you would have to build a lot of systems around a potential scenario where GPT does something strange, and then you have to handle it. And you never know, since it's AI and it's kind of not determined, you never know what strange thing going to happen, and also the hallucinations and everything. So that's why I had to wait until 2024, the summer, when they released the function calling and all the other things, where I felt like now it's not just smart and useful, but also it's stable. Because since I built agents and they run on autopilot, if they're not stable, they're kind of useless. And now they were finally stable. So I would say September 2024, when the LLM was good enough for what I do now.
The challenge, it strikes me, that people face right now is exactly the problem you're solving, which is saying, here's an agent that you can now use, and it will deliver, this particular benefit. Whereas I think everybody's been kind of stuck with this obvious power of generative AI, but no specific tool sets yet. I mean, or maybe it's all tools and no actual software in the end. And so now that you've started to build things, when you build them, are you building them for yourself? Are you building them for a targeted market? Are you building them so that they can at least begin to show value, and then the end user can iterate against them? How do you think about what an agent, where an agent sits in that relationship?
Yeah. So I have this huge bet I made in 2021 or somewhere, where seeing the progress both in AI and in the attention world, where I saw that the attention world is moving into the place where the talent means more than the money. So basically today, the talent costs more than the money. You can win a lot of attention if you have talent, but if you don't have talent and you just bring money, you can't win that much attention, because the ads are super expensive now and they just get more expensive. And the world doesn't trust the paid stuff, they trust the authentic stuff, etc. So I made a bet that there will be huge kind of almost revolution in the startups, where we will move from these giant companies with hundreds of people and millions in the funding. We will move into the world where solo founders or tiny teams with very focused and talented people will outcompete these bigger startups and corporations. That was my bet. And that's why I personally left the world of VC funded big bloated startups into this world where I wanted to build everything around myself, and like founder led startup where the whole thing is different. So when I made that bet, the second assumption I could make is that the whole software that we have in the world isn't built for such use cases. So almost all software we have in the world is built for employees to use. And no software in the world is built for founders to use, because founders are supposed to tell their employees what to do, and employees go to the software and do their job. And employees never have shortage in time. Employees have time to learn the tool, to train, etc. While if the founder has to use all the tools, they're not lazy, but they never have time, and they want to just do nothing and things happen. That's kind of the ideal way, right? You click the button, that's it. But nobody built software for that. And I thought, I have to build the software. So I have to be the founder of the future, and I have to build software for myself. And if I please myself with my software, then in a few years, in 2-3 years, there will be like many founders like me, and I will be the only supplier of the software for those founders. And that's exactly how things played out right now. So I just built agents for myself. I iterate until I'm happy. I have a lot of projects, so I can try my software on all my startups, which is great, because if I had just one, it would be dangerous. I could just build something that works only for one use case and then doesn't work for anyone else. But I have so many different projects, and some of them are corporate, some of them are consumer, some of them are directories. So I test everywhere, and eventually, when I'm happy, I push it to the market, and it always works because I'm such a good representation of the new audience that everybody from that audience just loves the product I ship once I like it myself. So I have a list of things to automate. I had it from the first day in 2021, and I haven't invented anything. So I'm just going one by one in the list, and I just pick the items which bring the most gain. So I see like right now, I have like in 2023, I felt I spent so much time on SEO, and I can't because I have like 20 websites. It's too much work, but I don't want to hire anyone because I do everything myself, or most things. And then I had to build that agent first. So I have the list that's fixed. I know everything I have to build, but the order changes based on the gain. Like if today this kind of thing brings the most gain, I build this first.
So, what do you think AI is at the present time? Obviously, everything is moving very quickly, but at the present time, where do you think AI agents are best suited, and where are you finding them not as well suited?
I think agents are the least suited for cases where you involve creativity. So a lot of people think AI is good at being creative, but AI is good at average creative stuff. But if you look at attention world, the average never wins. Even average plus never wins. Only the best, like only the tiny fraction that wins all the attention. And we're gonna get even more extreme. Like the better the algorithms get on the internet and social media, the more reward will go towards the best content. So the best will get even more attention, and the average will get even less attention. That's why I never been excited, and I'm not excited about using AI for that. But then again, not all content has to be creative. For example, SEO content is not creative content. It's a content that answers the question. People ask question on Google, they want the answer. They don't care if it's creative answer, if it's funny, if it's entertaining. They just care about the answer. But social media is different. In social media, you come for entertainment. You want to stay there because it's just fun. It's interesting, right? So I think it's really hard to use social media agents, and that's why until this day I run social media mostly myself, and my agents just help me with just distribution of the content I have created myself, right?
So you're saying AI content creation is just not going the AI generated creative content, or the
Yeah.
content itself won't be well received because in the end AI can't quite
Yeah.
find that,
AI is
whatever
not
it is.
able to be funny enough, so
Right.
it can't make jokes until this day. Like it's just not funny,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
also and also just whenever AI can mimic the human moves farther too. So basically, even if AI gets better, but it's zero sum game. If you open Twitter today, you're gonna scroll past 20 tweets. That's it. That's your attention span, for example. So it's just 20 content pieces that will be, consumed by you. 20 best. It means that whenever AI goes up, humans go higher up and they still win. So I think that's the game that will be impossible to win. And even at the moment when AI can create funny content, at that moment, people will start caring more about the origin of the content. Like now, all right, so it's like in chess, AI can play chess, but we still want to watch humans.
So it's interesting about the attention span, and quite frankly, what I see with your feed, you tend to take a little deeper dive, and go down into a little bit longer form. You also have a Substack
Yeah.
where you go pretty deep, and I see a lot of, since X has kind of opened up and allowed for more long form content. I see a lot of long form content, but I've also heard that people's attention spans are becoming more and more limited just out of the sheer socialization of their feeds, and that
Yeah.
this kind of training where they're swiping so quickly now that they. What are you finding? Are you finding that a deeper dive gets more engagement on a place like X,
Yeah.
or maybe you drive them to a Substack, or are you looking to deliver more punchy, quick nuggets as opposed to maybe a full meal?
Uh, I don't think the attention span is shrinking. I would rather say that people get more lazy when they consume stuff. They still want to consume profound content. We still want to learn important things, but we don't. We want to put less energy into it, right? And that's why in old days we were so hungry for content, and there was not so much content that you could push it in any format as long as it's education and you learn something, you read it, right? It doesn't matter if it's too long or if it's not that interesting, but if you learn, you read. And today we're kind of spoiled and we expect things to be easy but also beneficial and educational, etc. And that's why I bet on long form content, because short content is difficult to make it useful. So it can be kind of useful, but know, uh, very few people learn very few things from one-liners. Like those are more like for motivation. But if you want to learn something, you have to read, right? And then if you make it easy to read for users, then they get something they want. It's easy to read and they also learn from it. It's really hard to have the content that's at the same time easy to read and also as useful and valuable. It's easier to do one of two. It's easier to make cool content that's just fun to read or just good educational content. And I managed to do both. And I think that's the reason why I grown so fast on X, because I think I was one of the first who started doing long tweets. And I was one of the first who started doing like these deep dives in a way that it's kind of partly storytelling, partly funny, some jokes, but at the same time, it's kind of things you didn't know, and you want to bookmark to read it later.
Yeah,
And I see more people do that
this is
now.
where I became aware of you, is on X, and reading
Yeah,
your long form tweets, and seeing the. It's almost like a narrative of your experiences. Particularly, I was intrigued by your experiences with agent building against some of the large language models, and you really do break it down in terms of where you're finding success and where you're getting frustrated with some of the limitations that you are faced
yeah.
with.
I mean, it's interesting that the whole large language model phenomena happened around compression. So LLM compresses the world knowledge into one model, and then when it compresses, it has to understand the underlying reality so that it can decompress later when you ask the questions. And I think if you look at the X and social media and the content in general, compression is the answer. So people who can compress anything into something short and easily digestible, they get attention, they win attention, and also they create the urge to share and retweet, because people are they they just like the fact that you save them so much time by compressing it, by putting the effort that they want to thank you for that. And they want to be useful to their friends by sharing this content further, right? So that's kind of winning strategy. But compression is so hard because it requires you to understand what you're saying. Because if you don't understand, because most people they see stuff and they try to put that together. But if you don't understand, you can't compress, because how do you know what to remove? Now, how do you know how to rewrite it into the shorter thing? You can't if you don't understand. And I think the reason why it's natural for me to share content around agents and startups is that I understand that so well, because I use it not just for one startup, not just for one occasion, but multiple times, like 10 times, 20 times. And when you do the same thing so many times in different scenarios, you understand well enough that you can actually compress into even the shortest possible format, and that's kind of what happens.
How much time do you spend creating content, social content, for people to consume? Because you are an incredibly valuable follow, in my opinion. But it strikes me that it also takes a fair amount of time to
Yeah.
put that kind of content out there. So, how do you balance it?
So the way I work is that since I have a lot of agents, and all agents need certain human oversight, certain moderation. So my typical day is that I have to keep answering questions from my agents because they're always confused with something, or they have an idea but they want to make sure that it's a good idea, or they have a list of things they want me to pick using my intuition, etc. So my whole day is that I answer the short questions like A, B, or yes, no, or one of five, pick one,
And
and
these are
say
coming from the agents.
yes, exactly. And since that work doesn't require me to deeply, you know, get into the focus, or set aside 10 hours or whatever. So it's almost like a chat, right? So I'm chatting the whole day basically. That's like 90% of my job, I'm chatting. And also, even when I build products, I'm also chatting to the I'm prompting. So the agents or the AI tools, they all work around chatting or prompting. And because of that, Twitter is basically the same thing for me. So I see the tweet I make as my message, and then the reply on the comment is another message. So it comes on the same channel to me. So I see all those requests, or all that nagging back to me as the same. So I'm not really switching. I'm not sitting in Twitter for hour or two. So I have it all at the same time. And within 5 minutes, I can chat with one agent, chat with one co-maker, answer a reply on Twitter, and then go back and forth like 5 times. And that's kind of my day. So it's like moving between all these things every minute, sometimes seconds.
So let's talk about where we're headed. Um, so it is a brave new world. I mean, we've all seen technology advance, but this is a seems to me like the next 10 years are going to be very different than what we've seen over the past 20 or 30 years. Where do you see this in terms of the impact on? So you obviously have thought about how it's going to impact startups, maybe on how organizations to begin to scale or maybe not scale. But where do you see it impacting at the human level, kind of the mid-level tech worker, the folks? I mean, if you're using agents as opposed to hiring, there's a downstream effect to that. Now, not as many folks are in demand. Agents scale infinitely. They scale in a way that humans can't, quite frankly. And there's, to be honest, a lot of upside to having agents, in that they're not requiring benefits. They never get sick. They don't look for other jobs. They're incredibly reliable, although maybe not as creative and nimble. But where do you see this all going in terms of the impact on kind of the tech worker?
I think it will be very big, but not as big as one might expect. So, if the world was static and nothing has changed, and we just brought in the agents today, if you take all the agents, even my agents, if you actually implement them in all the companies in the world, you're going to lay off maybe half of the whole workforce, right? And I mean, at least because I have products, and I have so few people, and some might say that many of my products outcompete companies with 50 to 100 people, right? So that's kind of the proof, right? But the reality here is that because of this, because I can build products with very few people, it means that I can build the products which would not make sense in the former world because, for example, the markets were too little, or the potential for revenue was too little. So now, if it takes me just 1 month to launch a product, and I can do it all on my own, just pay to the agents, maybe 1K a month. So the whole burn is just my own salary and the agents, and I can do the whole thing. Suddenly, the whole new set of projects or ideas or niches open up, right? Which were otherwise like not viable sources for businesses. And that's, I think, what's going to happen. I think the world only cared about the areas where there was at least $1 billion market. So everything that was below $1 billion market, nobody built anything for that. And that's, I think, we probably have 99% of the world not covered by software, hardware, technology, marketplaces, and everything. So it's like almost the whole world is actually not that advanced as we think, because the typical person that builds stuff lives in this little bubble where you use the tools to build the tools. But the majority of the people, they do a lot of they lack a lot of software. And I think now, because a lot of people can build software with almost no investment and no cash that's needed there, I think we will see a lot more software demand. And because of that, we will see a lot more people building those small software products for small niches where the potential is, let's say, 1 million a year. That's the roof, right? But it's still good money and it's kind of fun. So I think the number of people who build startups will go crazy. I think there will be at least like 300 million people building startups compared to what we have now. Now maybe it's like 10 million people building. And because of that, the employment will become a problem. But I think most of the people will build startups, or they will be employed as just one employee only. So like, it makes sense to have employees when you have agents, because still you need human oversight, right? But you don't need so many employees. So I think that will be the solution.
Again, this is fascinating to me, because I was just reading actually a deeper dive. Andrew Chen, Andrew Chen, a deeper dive thought that he had around this idea that vibe coding is going to and once you kind of layer in a GUI interface like a Figma on top of vibe coding, you're going to end up with anybody can start to create software one-off for themselves.
Yeah.
And what you'll end up with is to your point, no longer will it be large companies developing large software to become valuable. It'll be very small niche players developing very small niche software to become valuable in a completely different level. But because they're smaller, their value doesn't need to be at the same scale to be worth it.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing becomes almost a reduction in the value of large software development, to the point where you're kind of where you are, where you're building for a use case. But I'm curious, if you play your thought out there, are people geared or socialized or capable of becoming founders? I mean, it seems to me that most people don't want it. That even if it is kind of all easy to do now, it's still, as you pointed out earlier, there are times where it's like it's not actually all that much fun. Things happen, pandemics hit, all of a sudden your whole plan is shifted, and you have to weather the storm and have that kind of grit and resilience. And not everybody, I think, is built like that.
I have quite unusual opinion on this, which I had for a long while. So back in 2010, when iPhone happened and the internet on the phone happened and Instagram came in, I remember I was doing mobile apps back then. And I remember there were a lot of discussions where people thought that the content creation on Instagram is going to fail because like the regular person doesn't want to create content, annotate image, and put together a video clip and write text and add hashtags, because it's kind of a thing for content creators. That's just tiny minority of the people. They're born that way, and they do that. Like the extroverted people who like to share stories, but the regular people don't do that. And today, almost everyone creates content on at least one social media. So some people do it on Twitter, some do it on Instagram, some do it on Facebook, etc.
Well, and by
So,
creating content, you're saying participate in the conversation because,
well, no, by creating content, I mean they actually put time that was considered as a serious kind of effort to create content. And we didn't think that people will actually do that because they will just scroll. So we thought people will just scroll and just few people will create and most people will scroll. But we ended up in a world where few people create content that gets attention. That's true. But at the same time, if you look at the number of people who create content, not the viral, but in general, the content, like more than 50% of social media users, they actively create content, and some of them put time into it. Like they actually use tools to make the videos and put some filters and things like that, and some even more, which was something nobody anticipated. People thought that 1 out of 100 will do, the rest won't. But we see it like almost 50 out of 100, and out of those 50, maybe 20 do it pretty serious, which is not something people expected. And I think if you look at the software, the world has been in the old ages. We had the world where more people did their own stuff. People build their own houses. Almost everyone built their own house, for example. Now we could say that most people like incapable of building their own house. I think it's all about the market. So in today's market, there is no incentive and there is punishment for being a founder. So there's no incentive. It means that you can actually make good money on a corporate job compared to being founder in most cases, right? Don't go there for the money. And then the punishment is that if you're in a corporate job, you get your insurance paid and a lot of other perks. So basically, the invisible hand of the open market created the condition where people don't want to be founders and only few people want to be founders. But we're moving into the world where the whole thing will change. So it'll be cooler to be a founder. It'll be more respectful. People will kind of give you a like for that. And the other thing is that it'll be more punishment to be a corporate worker, because once agents replace the corporate workers, the salaries will drop. The requirements will grow. You have to work more and earn less. So once you make that job, less paid and more like harder job that gets you paid less, and then being founder is the opposite. You get more money and more respect, and I think we will see slowly people moving from one group to the other group. But at the same time, of course, same as in content creation, the number of founders who are incredibly good won't really change that much. Same as in the content, like the best content creators are fixed group of people, and it was always that size of the people. But at the same time, since same like in content creation, like Mr. Beast is the best YouTuber, but he doesn't want to create content about cows, like about milking a cow. Like he doesn't want to create that. If he wanted, he would come there and crush everyone, right? Because he's the best. But he will not go there. It means that there are certain niches in the YouTube where nobody wants to make a content. And if you go and make the content there, as long as you're okay, you're going to get a lot of views. And I know a lot of content like that. Like I have rabbits and I look for rabbit kind of content on YouTube. And it's very average content with like a lot of views because there's a niche for that. And the guy is selling something and he's making good money out of the content. He's doing affiliate sales for the pills for rabbits, etc. Same thing for founders. I think once you lower the bar, like today, the bar is huge. You either build $1 billion company or don't enter the game because there's nothing else there. But imagine in a world where you can build a tiny little app for a tiny little group, and by design, no super talented founders want to compete with you because they have bigger niches and bigger audiences, then it's not that hard anymore because you have tools, small competition, it's respectful, well paid. Corporate jobs are not that good anymore.
Well, so one of the things that you also talk about is starting up. in general, and how you should think about it, and you offer straight up advice around, if I were to start something today, here's some of the things I would do. Um, and one of the things that you talked about recently was how to think about what to start. So obviously that's job one, right? What am I going to start? Not Well, I guess job one is I agree I will start.
Yeah.
But then you have to come up with a thing to start, um, if you don't already have one. And so, what advice would you offer to somebody who's thinking, okay, I agree with what John's saying. We all need to start thinking about becoming founders and entrepreneurs and get going. So, how would you offer? What advice would you offer to somebody who's in that nascent stage of trying to figure out what to do?
By default, people do exactly the wrong thing. So they go and do something that's popular and everybody else is doing. Like, for example, everyone is building AI wrapper or AI chatbot. They build that. So my advice is the opposite. So just look at everything what people are building and don't build that, because there's huge competition there. So your job as a founder to make sure you avoid competition. So to make sure that you are the only one doing what you do, not just today, but also tomorrow, right? Like, you might be lucky and nobody heard about it, but then tomorrow everybody enters the game and it's same problem. Like, just because you're the first one, it doesn't mean anything. People come in and the prices drop. So make sure that you pick the niche where the competition is low and the potential of competition is low too. And that means that you have to look for smaller niches or for less popular stuff. It means that it's the opposite of what you want, because by default, all your ideas will be something popular, because you consume popular content, you consume the trends, and then you will think like everybody else. So by default, you think like everybody else. So all other founders who think about the idea today, you're all sitting and thinking the same thing now. So do the opposite. Pick the niche that you like. For example, like flowers or schooling or tractors, whatever. So it has to be something not sexy enough, but also something you are willing to understand and to be one of the experts in this niche, probably one of the best in the world, or at least in your area. And if you do that, then you have to figure out the problems of that niche. And the best way, what I've been doing myself, is that I find a niche and I try to I try to learn and I try to sell service to the niche, because service is way easier compared to product, because service is human doing the work, and usually it's easy to sell because you just make one transaction with one person and you drop the price and they just buy from you because you drop the price. That it happens for services, right? For products, it doesn't happen, because product is both forever. They buy it to use forever, but service is just one time. And then you do the service, and while you do the service, you learn what could be turned into the product, what part of the service could be turned into the product. And you maybe have to do a lot of services to figure out which part can be turned into product. And this is a really good way, because on the way of doing this, you also understand the audience. You have a chance to pitch your products to the audience because you're making something for them physically right there. And then you can test your ideas, and if something clicks with the audience, you can build the product. So it's like multi-step. It's not like you wake up in the morning and you come up with an idea. But for me, that worked so many times, and just coming up with an idea almost never worked for me, and I haven't seen that working for anyone almost. So I think people should, like, the idea is more important than everything else. Like, people think that idea is not important. It's false, because you can put infinite amount of effort into bad idea. And by bad idea, I mean the idea that's bad and it's also for wrong audience in a wrong format. So all the details about the idea, not just the one liner, but all the details around. And I think people should invest more into the idea itself and who they sell it to, in what format, what size. And if that job is done well and you actually get feedback, like you validate with the actual buyer that they want it, and then they keep asking you, when is this done? Like, you say in a month, and they call you in a month, and is it done? it means that they actually need it. And then there's very low chance to fail from that moment. And there's very high chance to fail if you don't have the validation. So I would say validate the idea first by doing this kind of steps. Enter as a spy into their network, try to understand what they want, and then pitch the ideas. And then the one that clicks, go and build that one.
So how do you build? So the hardest sale is the first sale. I would say, having done this a few times myself,
Yeah.
it's always amazing to me when you get your first sale. You think, I can't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have no references. We've never done this before, and yet they trusted that we could do it, and they are the first ones to buy. It's always it's why you see that the first dollar bill in the cafe on the wall. It's the first
Yeah.
dollar anybody ever earned. They're very proud of it. So how do you overcome that credibility gap or that kind of experience gap? Is it as simple as just getting on social media and kind of exuding everything that you said, that you are truly an expert and you now have all this content that would reflect your expertise? I mean, how do you kind of establish yourself as credible enough to do that first deal?
One of the easiest way for that is also going through the service. So basically, it's easier to sell service than product, because when you sell service, you can gamble with the price, and price for the service is really important compared to the price of the product. For the product, people look at the product first and price second. For the service, is the other way around. They look at the price first, because usually the service is more obvious what you're going to do. Like you say, I will do this, so there's scope, but product is more broad. And with the service, you can perform the service before you were paid for it. So you can perform the service as a trial, even without asking. For example, there are people on Facebook or on Twitter who are designers, and they just redesign a website for someone and they tag them. And if the tagged person likes the redesign, they will actually buy it, right? So now you convince with actual effort and you show what you can do. With the product, that's harder. Like you can't invite somebody to your product. That's against the terms, and also you need their email, so it won't work, right? But with the service, you can, for example, you're SEO expert, you could roast their SEO profile from the public data, or you could just write an article for them and send it to them and say, here's the article I just made for free for you. And almost for every niche, you can do that. You can just do the little effort for free and hope that one of 5 people who receive that effort from you, they will buy. And once they bought from you the service, now you're in their house. So from now on, you activate the next phase where you try to figure out what product you could launch for them. And because they bought the service from you, they will easily buy a product from you, even if you have no users for the product, but they already have the trust for you.
To our earlier exchange around the makeup of somebody, what advice do you offer to those people that are starting things up, that are going to face the inevitable frustrations, disappointments? What do you think a person needs in terms of kind of a character check in order to be able to have a fighting chance at being successful as an entrepreneur?
I think the most important is to understand the reality and realize that this is not a quick game. So a lot of people read stories about entrepreneurs who started 6 months ago and now they're making millions, because there are people like that, right? And the
Well,
stories,
there's a lot of social media like that, where it's like, I did this, and look at everybody
no,
wants to tell you about their
even
their
if that happens,
success.
I mean, even if that happens, it's like, imagine somebody went to the forest, and there was a lost item, and somebody was lucky to stumble upon that item right away, right? And then it doesn't mean that you will do the same, because the luck plays the role as well. And if you are winning really fast, it means that you were smart, and also luck was, in the mix. That's why it happened so fast, in the right place, right time, right tool. Right? And the social media and other media, they highlight these stories because obviously they spark attention, and that's what they do. But if you look at the number of these founders versus number of other founders who are also successful, but they had 10-year run, and only then that happened. Like the ratio is probably 1 to 99 or way worse than that. So it means it's just gambling. Hoping that you will be the one who wins that quickly is just gambling, is same as lottery. So I think people should enter the game only if they accept the fact that the game will take 10 years, and the first 3 to 4 years is almost like a training camp. So you don't really have to expect to win in your first 3, 4 years. That's why I always recommend people the first years, do not pick big fights. Like imagine it's a sport. You don't want to go into the ring with the professional boxer on your first boxing day. You want to just spar with the punching bag first, right? Not with a human even. Same thing here. So pick the easiest thing you can pull off. Because if you start with the complicated stuff and you say, well, Steve Jobs didn't start that way, he just went in with Apple. And if you try that, you will fail with a 100% chance, almost like with 99.9%. And if you fail right away when you start, it's very hard to continue. Like even if you continue, you will be salty. You will be not really happy about the whole thing. So that's what, pick the fight you can win. And there are a lot of fights you can win in this game. As I say, like service fight is easier to win. Free products are easier to win. Non-SaaS products are easier to win. For example, directories, job boards, like this kind of basic products. It's easier to win because for a directory to win, you need traffic. Traffic is way easier to get than sales. So maybe first year, don't fixate yourself on revenue. Just think about attention. It's easier to win, right? And then once you won the attention, you get the confidence. You want to play the game further. Now go and try to win some payments, some revenue, like small tickets, and then go further. So basically, play the game as sport players do, as almost all the other professions do, where nobody expects to be great on the first day, and people understand that it's a lifelong journey, and you have to go division by division. You start at the bottom, and you have to do like simple things at the start.
So you're one of the things you're noted for is your take on the directory model. Can you briefly describe what the directory business model is?
Yeah, so directories are the website listing items within certain niche. For example, directory of all AI coding tools, directory of all people who can build you an MVP, etc. So why directories are important? Because in the world of infinite choice, the people who help you to choose from large quantity of items are useful people. So people don't know what to pick, like which tool you want to use, which marketing tool you want to use, which template, which freelancer is great at building a website, etc. So it's hard to pick, because in old world it was easy because there were very few offerings. So you usually go with one because you only know one. And now you know a lot. And with the Google and with ChatGPT, they can help you with more options. You now have even more options than in the past. So I predicted back in 2020 that directories will be big, because since it's easier to build stuff, there will be like so many alternatives for the same thing that it will be impossible to pick, because they're just the same things. And what do you pick? And humans are very careful about picking the right thing, because you're always afraid that you will be stupid by picking the bad product. You want to pick the best product. And directories solve this problem. So usually the makers of directories understand the topic so well that they're able to put items into the directory in a very good way. They highlight the right things. They use the good filtering options for you. They categorize things in the right buckets so that you can quickly narrow down the list from 500 items to 50 to 5 to 1, and then you take it. So the value is huge, and value will only grow as we see more people building more products. right? So I think the need for directories will just grow. And building directories is easy from the technology point of view because it's just a website with items. So you can do it with no code, you can do it with AI code. That's why I'm so bullish on directories, because first, it's the easiest tech product one can build. It takes half an hour to start, and then it takes some time to collect the items and to write good descriptions, etc. And then it's also the easiest product to promote because directories are promoted using SEO. So you don't need an audience on Twitter. You don't need cold sales skills or anything. You just create good content, some blog articles, or even you create nothing. Just the items themselves serve as content for Google, and Google might send you traffic for that. So there's no other product that's easy to build and doesn't have competition. If you pick the right idea, usually you can avoid competition. And also it can get free traffic from Google. So there's no investment at all. There is some investment in time. That's why I think that's where people should start.
It's funny you say that. I just realized as you were describing that's effectively what we did with Solutions Review when we built Solutions Review 12 years ago or 13 years ago now, was build effectively directories around enterprise technology categories and kind of make it easier for buyers to find the sellers that are most relevant, and then vice versa. I mean, one of the great business models of the internet is connecting buyers with sellers. And so if you can find the buyers through the content that you create or the directories you create, more than likely the sellers will find you.
Yeah, exactly.
And
They want to be shown to those buyers, right?
Correct. So yeah, it's good advice, and this has been a great conversation. I've very much enjoyed it. I appreciate you coming on and excuse me, and spending an hour of time with us and sharing all this information. Best of luck in 2025 with all that you're building. I'm going to continue to track you closely on it's John Rush X. At x.com, and also I think you have a Substack as well. That folks can subscribe to. But again, thanks very much.
Handle.
Anything else? Anything you wanna promote while you have a moment?
I would say my Twitter, because I share there everything. And if you go to my Twitter and you go to highlights tab, and I highlighted all the good tweets I ever made. And I think if somebody's just starting out or somebody is not successful yet, I think just reading all my tweets from highlight tab and putting like a week of time into actually reading them all and then reading the replies where people ask good questions and I answer the questions, I think that probably may serve as the best free education a founder can get in the world right now. I think so. It's 100% free and short, compressed, good content with the follow-up discussions where I talk with other founders when they ask questions. Very good content. So I would recommend people to consume that.
Well, we'll make sure to put all those links in the description of this video. Again, John, thank you very much for the time today. And I look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Want more Insight Jam? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for shorts, panels, podcasts, and more. In your Shorts feed, enjoy a daily dose of best practices from tech experts and leading solution providers, while long-form panel discussions and keynotes, recorded live every quarter, go deep on important industry topics. And don't miss our collection of regular podcasts, keeping you informed on the latest trends. We're hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so subscribe to be notified of our next upload.
Powered by Insight Jam.